Hello everyone. Welcome to this week's free Father Ted update. It's been another disappointing week with both my colleagues, which is very disappointing, and Sonia Friedman Productions and Hat-Trick Productions, obviously trying to freeze me out. I phoned up one of my colleagues on the show and had a very cold conversation with him, which I wasn't expecting, since he was someone I brought onto the show who was on the request of author Paul Wonderful. His name is. I've always got on with him. I've always liked him, but I spoke to him this week, and just got the cold shoulder. And he said something to me that was very revealing. He said, there's other issues. Why aren't you worried about Ukraine and stuff? So I thought I would bring on someone to talk about why we all should be worried about what's happening to kids at the moment, and how I will never let the Father Ted musical be used to continue this very harmful ideology. To do that, I've got a very special guest with me. Stephanie Davies Arai had some wonderful news this week when it was announced that she is going to receive the British Empire Model for her services to children. Stephanie has been fighting this nonsense for years, and to see this is just the most wonderful thing. It's an absolute vindication of everything she has been fighting, everything we have all been fighting for. So without further ado, I want to bring her in and ask her a couple of questions about that and this issue. So Stephanie, hello, how's it going? Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Graham.
Do I call you Milady now, or what is it? What is the correct?
No, I'm the same person. Graham.
Really, I don't have to look down.
No,
nothing like that. Okay, good.
Honestly,
good.
I haven't changed.
Where were you? Where were you when you found out? How did you find out?
Just at home. It was an email, and it was, it was. It knocked me out, really. It was the last thing I would have expected. I'm used to being called a bigot and a transphobe, and so to get an honour like this is really an honour, and yeah. I'm really thrilled that it's for services to children, and that has been recognised, that the work I'm doing is in the service of children.
Yes. And you've been fighting this for a number of years. Let's talk a little bit about, when did you set up Transgender Trend, and why did you set it up?
In 2015, and I set it up. I come from the place of having worked with parents and teachers for over 2 decades before setting up Transgender Trend. So I really came to this through parenting, and because I work with parents quite closely, I know all of the problems.
Yes.
I've heard everything, and then suddenly, probably it was around 2013-14, there started to be a lot of stories about trans kids in the press, and they'd appeared from nowhere. And what alarmed me was the advice being given to parents that if a boy said I'm a girl and insisted on that, the parents should go along with that and say, yes, you are a girl, at an age where children can't distinguish between fantasy and reality, and don't understand the immutability of sex. They don't understand themselves as male or female, really. They understand stereotypes up until about the age of 7. So there was such a lot. It sort of goes against any other parenting advice I've ever seen. So I came to it from that angle. But the other thing that really alarmed me was that nobody was talking about it. And I know in the parenting advice world, so there's a huge industry, the parenting advice industry, that nobody, there's fairly, within that world, fairly famous parenting coaches, websites, etc. And nobody was talking about it. And I know, I worked in a primary school for 8 years, and I know anything new that comes in for kids, any sort of new diagnosis or new idea, is hotly debated, and people disagree with it, and people are allowed to disagree with it. But there wasn't a peep. There was radio silence on this one issue. So that really rings alarm bells for me. If people are not discussing openly a new kind of diagnosis or label for children, then that suggests something's going on that's wrong. And if you can't talk about something that impacts children, children are put at risk. It's really simple.
And isn't it, well, you know, I mean, this is like the Father Ted update. So to try and kind of fold it back into that aspect, isn't it extraordinary that to silence me, they will actually, to ensure that they don't have to talk about it, they will actually cancel a West End musical that could do gangbusters at the box office, you know? I mean, like, that's what I'm noticing as well. There's a complete cone of silence around all my colleagues in this. They will not talk to me about it, except to say that they don't understand why I care about it. Why? Let me answer them by asking you that question. Why do you care about this, Stephanie? What's at stake?
Because it's causing harm to children. Really simply.
Yes. What kind of harm? What kind of harm? Like, first of all, if we could talk about, like, there's individual cases of harm, isn't there? But there's also a wider harm. Can you talk about both?
It's on so many levels. One, I mean, we see the political debates about what is a woman, but we've got a generation now of young people who can't actually define the word woman, who don't know what the difference is between a man and a woman. With young children, you're pulling the rug of reality out from under them. You're destabilizing reality, which is not... So, and then you go into the areas of, say, a male pupil using the girls' toilets and changing rooms, and the girls are told that he's a girl, so he's allowed to. So there's that kind of gaslighting, and the kind of way that, because what you're describing is also what's going on in schools, that you can't talk about it, you can't disagree with it. So everybody knows that this pupil is a boy, but they're being told he's a girl. So that, I think particularly for girls, I don't know what the psychological impact of that kind of gaslighting will be as they grow up. I don't know how it will impact children's trust in adults, children's understanding of reality, because it's like they're being told, no, you know, if male and female are not real, then what else is not real? It is destabilizing. So I think these are stable properties. You know, the male sex and the female sex are stable properties, and it's those realities are what anchor us to the reality of the world, and not just the world, but it's the physical reality of ourselves on the most fundamental level.
Yes.
So if you're confusing children, you know, you hear of children who get a lesson on transgender and it causes great anxiety. So we get a lot from parents about this, that, you know, their daughter can't sleep because she's worried she's going to wake up as a boy. She's worried that, or a boy is worried that if he does anything so-called feminine, that's going to change him into a girl. And I think what I would say is it's adultification of children. In other words, we're treating children as if they are full adults, that they have the same cognitive abilities, the same life experience, the same developmental stage as adults.
Yes.
And to me, anything that treats a child as a little adult is going to cause damage.
Yes. Yes. It also has, of course, huge implications for safeguarding, as we know. But there's also the fact that there are certain groups who are overrepresented amongst kids who identify as trans. Can you tell us what those groups are?
Well, 75% teenage girls. So this is a completely new group. Has not been seen before in the gender clinics. It hasn't been seen before. And we know very little about this group, and yet we're giving them the most extreme treatment in approach. In other words, we're affirming them as boys, and in the treatment, puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. But these are not adolescents who've been suffering gender dysphoria since early childhood. That's the model we know about. So there's teenage girls, lesbian and gay children,
Mhm.
So you're much more likely if you're before puberty, and let's remember it used to be mostly boys
Mhm.
feeling gender dysphoria before puberty, and the overwhelming likelihood with those boys under what was called a watchful waiting approach, which was developmentally informed,
Mhm.
and looked at every case differently, because it was recognised that there were all sorts of reasons why a child might believe that they're the opposite sex. So they were given, watchful waiting didn't mean do nothing. It meant sometimes some therapy, sometimes family therapies, exploring what was going on, what was behind it. So they were, under that approach, around 80%. We've got 12 studies of so from all those studies, around 80% desisted from those feelings during adolescence and
Yes.
became reconciled with their biological sex, and the majority grew up to be gay.
Yes.
It's a huge majority. I think it's around 60%, but grew up to be gay, healthy, happy gay
Well,
men.
of course, we know that in the Tavistock, there was a dark joke going around that in the future, the doctors used to say, in the future, there won't be any gay people left because of what was happening to them at the Tavistock, but autistic people, kids are also overrepresented, aren't they?
Autistic, it's between 35 and 48% of children who are being referred to the Tavistock are on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you have to look at why, and we don't know why. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can speculate, but we haven't had any studies on that. And the other is looked after kids in care.
Yes.
And a lot of these children have pre-existing mental health issues, previous trauma, including sexual abuse, very chaotic and sometimes abusive backgrounds for children in care. We're looking at the most vulnerable children. And why? And we're saying, I see a lot about suicidal ideation in trans kids, as if, but those issues exist, and the question we need to ask is, why is it the most vulnerable children who are getting caught up in this and deciding they're transgender?
Yes,
I think that's the way around to look at it.
And what happened to children's services and to the wider world that they suddenly stopped? I mean, these are all basic things. These are all very, like, for instance, can you tell people what transitioning actually means to, say, a 16-year-old who believes they're born in the next body, born in the wrong body? What do these procedures involve?
Okay, so I'll just take that first question first, because I think the reason that everybody's silent and everybody's going along with this is that it's a political issue, and children have been, the state of a child with gender dysphoria becomes a transgender child. That's very new to label a child transgender, and so it was the least likely outcome. Around 20% would grow up to be transsexual as adults. So labeling children transgender is very new, and it has politicized the child. It has politicized a clinical condition, and we don't see that in any. We don't have a political word for girls with body dysmorphia or children with body dysmorphia or anorexia or eating disorders. We don't have a political group to put them in.
Yes.
So this one has become politicized, and once it's politicized, then we look at these. I think it's why it goes back to the adultification of children. They're no longer treated as children; they're treated as members of a political group with rights, and so that changes the approach. Nobody dares say anything and also it's linked. The T is linked to the LGB, so everybody thinks it's the same as gay rights.
Yes, absolutely.
Same as gay children. So, I mean, starting from that, once you say a child is transgender, then you have to affirm them as transgender. And what that means is you're affirming that a girl is a boy. What you're really affirming is her body hatred, body disassociation, feelings of self-hatred and self-rejection. affirmation is presented as a
positive
thing, the only legitimate response, a kind response.
Yes.
In fact, look at what you're affirming. It's all her self-rejection. She wants to become somebody else. She hates herself so much. So once you start on that path, and that is starting in primary schools. Once you start on that path, then you well, for teenagers, it's sort of the inevitable next step is taking puberty blockers, because you're growing up and your body is changing into the body of of the opposite sex, according to how you've been told your belief has been affirmed.
Yes.
So each stage of the process, this is what's called iatrogenic. Each stage of the process leads to the next. I think with the prepubertal children, they're brought up in a way that divorces them so much from the reality of their own bodies. And when you're, before puberty, it's really easy for a boy to be a girl. I mean, the children look gender neutral. Lots of boys look like girls look like boys. So it's very, very easy then. And you get to puberty and your body starts changing in the way that's different to, so if you're a boy, different to all the other girls. And then what do? I think that's part of what creates the suicidal ideation, because where do you go then if your body, it's like a reality check, isn't it? Puberty. So again, inevitably, you need to go on the puberty blockers just to keep yourself sort of stable. And that, we know that, from the Tavistock zone study, that 98% of that study went on to take cross-sex hormones, and that's replicated around the world, that once you're on the medical pathway, you don't get off. And if you take puberty blockers, and let's remember that puberty blockers are it's not Smarties, they stop your puberty, and you need those sex hormones, not just for secondary sex characteristics, but for every single part of your body, your organs, your skin, your brain, your bones, everything. And we're stopping that. And these children grow, if they do that at Tanner stage 2 of puberty, which can be around age 10, 11, 12, and then they go on to cross-sex hormones at age 16, they are sterilized.
Yes.
They are infertile because eggs and sperm haven't started developing yet.
Yes.
So that's one thing. And the other thing is the loss of sexual function, so sexual pleasure. And the fact that there's a cascade then. Girls tend to have double mastectomy, which is not a simple operation. It's not a simple thing to surgically remove body parts. And then the girls on testosterone, a few years down the line, there'll be vaginal atrophy, uterine atrophy, which means a hysterectomy. And you will never actually become the opposite sex. It's held up to children. Children is a very easy thing.
Not only that, but the some of the extraordinary moments that have come out of this whole fight, like like straight women who have a double mastectomy and have male features, are going into gay bathhouses expecting to be welcomed and as fellow gay men, which of course isn't happening because they're smashing up against reality. So you have to ask yourself what is the mental effect that is, what is the effect of that on their peace of mind? How is that? What's the fallout from that going to be?
I think it can exchange one form of gender dysphoria for another. So a girl becomes a man and finds that she's always sort of pretending or having to put on an act of being a man, and doesn't quite cut it. And before that she was trying to be a proper girl and not quite cutting it, which a lot of girls feel like that at puberty. And I think it's not surprising to me that it's teenage girls that are driving that huge increase in figures, because girls unfortunately quite commonly suffer distress at puberty. And I think puberty is a difficult time. It can be a really rocky road, but it's the time in life where the biggest developmental changes are happening. It is critical. There's no other time of life like it. And you go through it in order to become an adult. Nobody said it would be easy. And children need support through that time. But what the rewards are, you become an adult.
Yeah.
And what I really can't sort of get my head around is that giving the blockers and the hormone and the cross-sex hormones to children, these children are becoming adults without ever having gone through puberty, because the opposite sex hormones don't make you go through puberty. All they do is cosmetically change secondary sex characteristics. That's not puberty.
Yes, and I've heard also that a lot of kids who go down this path, they watch as their kind of peers go through puberty, become different people, change in the way that is kind of we've been doing for since the start of humanity, and they're stuck in this kind of halfway house where with their actual body function, like we're talking about. The other thing, as you pointed out about the atrophying, I also spoke to Elaine Miller. She says that these young girls who take testosterone are going into menopause 30 years too early. So these young women think they're turning into young men, but they're actually turning into old women, or older women, with the kind of it's like the kind of I don't know. I just the other thing is, as we were saying, this is particularly happening to gay kids, to autistic kids. So in effect, what we're doing, aren't we, is we're experimenting on gay and autistic kids. Is that fair to say?
We're experimenting on the most vulnerable kids. Yeah, I mean, I'd say gay, lesbian, autistic. Those with mental health problems, and often the mental health problems emerge in adolescence. Kids in the care system.
Yes.
These are kids who I think are more susceptible to those kind of messages, where maybe they've been bullied, they've always felt left out, they've always felt odd and different. They don't fit in with their same-sex peer group. And that's a really hard position to be in particularly at puberty. I think the most important thing to adolescence is fitting in with your peer group, having your tribe, feeling that you're accepted and included. There's nothing more important than that. And so if you don't, then here's this really great answer, and we know that in schools now, then you get to join the rainbow group, the rainbow tribe, the LGBTQ plus tribe, and it's become the only way for a child to show non-conformity is to have a gender identity or a sexual identity. So you're pansexual,
aromantic,
whatever, that shows that you don't conform, because the alternative in this new model, in this new binary, so we used to have male, female, which is a real binary. We've now got transgender, cisgender. So who'd want to be the cisgender kid? Because that means you're conforming. You're a girl who totally accepts feminine stereotypes. You're quite happy and comfortable. Or you're a boy who accepts the masculine stereotypes and is quite, no conflict at all. So it really, it's become the only sort of subculture. And then you've got your gang, you've got your tribe, and suddenly you have status. And you're part of the cool gang. Yeah. So we in this one area, we forget everything we know about teenagers, everything we know about child development. Everything goes out of the window. That people say, well, you're trans, and that, and there's nobody can make a child trans. It's as if this one group of children live outside their culture in a little bubble, and they're completely immune to influence. at the time where online they are absolutely bombarded with messages that if they feel this way, if they feel a bit awkward, they're probably trans.
Yeah.
So this message is coming everywhere across all social media platforms. Children are encouraged to believe that their gender identity is, maybe, I'm a boy, because I don't fit into girly stereotypes, and you're transgender. And transgender, remember, is a word that has no meaning. It's not a clinical diagnosis. It's got no scientific biological meaning. And children are told it means whatever you want it to mean, and nobody has the right to question you.
Yeah.
So
we know it, like it is so. But I guess the reason someone just asked what this has got to do with the Father Ted musical, that's a good question. Absolutely nothing, and yet they're banning the Father Ted musical because I oppose these types of practices that are mutilating and sterilizing young kids. So that's why Stephanie is here. And Stephanie, I can't thank you enough for popping in at this at this time, especially since you're now officially member of the royal family. I think it is. Is it
something like that?
Something like that. But I like again. Thank you so much for dropping by. I just wanted to kind of bring you on just to show my colleagues on the show why this is important,
I don't understand why. I mean, despite the silencing, and we've all, experienced that, being ostracized from the group, being called a bigot, being suddenly cast as a really evil person. Despite all that, I really don't understand why more people don't care.
Yes. It's extraordinary.
That's what, that's what bothers me. Why don't more people understand and care about this? I think we, when the issue's children, I know we're a nation that cares about our pets more than children, but, I just think, these are children. We have a responsibility as a society to really examine what's being taught to children, how children are being treated, and particularly in an area with such huge life implications for children.
Yes,
it's beyond me that there isn't a huge public outcry.
Well, I know at the moment that Jimmy Mulville of Hat Trick and Sonia Friedman of Sonia Friedman Productions are doing everything they can to avoid having this conversation. But I'm going to continue doing these updates so that they have to. Stephanie, thank you so much. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
I hope there'll be a chance to get together and touch the medal or something like that. So it'd be lovely to see you. Thanks again, Stephanie. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Graham. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, I'm so happy she did that. That was really good. So, yeah, I mean, that was basically because yesterday I had a call with one of my colleagues who basically said, why do you care about this? That's why I care about this. They're mutilating and sterilizing gay, autistic, and gender non-conforming children. Why are you not concerned about this? Paul Woodfull, Neil Hannon, Arthur Matthews, Jimmy Mulville, Sonia Friedman. As I've been saying, this Father Ted, I will not let Father Ted be used as a vehicle to push or minimize what's happening to young people at the moment. And I think it's shameful, to be honest, that my colleagues and my producers are asking me to do so. I, in fact, want to make a promise here. The only people who work on the Father Ted musical, I'm going to ask that everybody who works on it signs the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights. This is a fairly, I would say, non-controversial declaration that everyone should sign. But I don't think, I'm going to make sure people know this. No one will work on the Father Ted musical unless they sign a declaration that reaffirms that women have sex-based rights, that they're important, that they will be defended. My show will not stand against those concepts. My show will not be used in a way that I think is harmful. I'm not going to remove myself from the show, and I am I remain disgusted at my colleagues and my producers that they are not standing up for me at this point. This is just the first of many. See you next week, and I'll be talking about whether there's any developments next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.